guys, I'm back after a month or two, and I'd like to talk to you about what's changed during that period. And I'm going to talk about cables. As controversial as it is, I believe in cables big time, and I think that once your boxes, like your amplifiers, like your sources, and loudspeakers are the best, the top of what you can reach, then the next step is to upgrade cables so that you can get the most out of your boxes. It worked for me. It couldn't have worked better. I know there's a lot of deniers and who believe in cables are in clear minority. But I can't even find the right words of how much I think cables matter and how much difference they can make to a good system. Again, if you have like budget amplifiers and AV receivers, and I don't know, I just don't want to mention any brands, but basic speakers, you might not hear the difference between one cable and the other. But once you have top equipment, it's clear. And not only cables that are in the signal path, but power cables, sometimes even more. Clear differences. Power cables have clear sound character, and I have a good few cables I've been playing with for a long while, and I know the character of each one, and it doesn't really matter on what equipment you use them on, even sources or amplifiers included. The character is pretty much the same. Sometimes they pair up with a certain type of device better than another type. The same with models and even individual pieces. I don't know what it depends on. It's something that can't really be measured. That's exactly why nobody or most people don't believe in it. Another interesting thing is many say, those that believe in cables, of course, that go full loom, use the same brand, because cables, especially in the low and mid end, color the sound, and it can be used. They can be used to tweak the sound and get the sound you like most. And after a while, you know which cable colors the sound in which way, so you can combine things the way that it's to your liking. But after a while, and it's true for not only cables, but for my hi-fi career, let's say, everybody usually starts liking the warm sound. Then they realize that it's boring and not lifelike. And if you go to a live gig and then go home and listen to a warm system, especially on the cheap end of the market, you will see how muddy, you will hear how muddy everything is, and there's no transience. So after that, I started looking for things with good timing, and I found some, and I loved them, but for some reason they sounded a little bit harsh and shouty. I can mention names, and I only mentioned the name of the name. And you have to go up to the top of the upgrade ladder to find the one with good timing and also sounding pleasant, not harsh, and also bandwidth. Sometimes the systems with good timing focus on the mid-range for some reason. I don't know, and like bass and like highs. So you have to go high up the ladder to have a system with good timing, good transients, and also good bandwidth. I don't know why they rule each other out, even though according to the theory, you know, the Fourier transformation can convert time into frequency range and back. So a system with a quick, fast system with good timing should translate into good bandwidth, but it's somehow not necessarily the case. So Fourier transformation says that any waveform, any sound signal can be made by adding up sine waves with different frequencies, 1, 2, 3, or an unlimited number of sine waves are required to build any waveform. And the leading edge of a transient, which is a waveform, like an impulse, is determined by the highest frequencies, sine wave used to create that transient impulse signal. Imagine an ideal square wave, in which case the signal gets up in 0 time. So it's so steep that it's vertical, the leading edge. And obviously, if you think about it, it would require our infinite frequency signal sine wave to be part of the sine waves that are added up to create that impulse, which of course it's only a theoretical case. You will never reach that. But the higher up you go with sine waves you add to create this waveform you want to create, the steeper leading edge you can reach. And transients typically, for example, a snare drum hit is a good transient with a quite steep leading edge. It requires quite high frequency components to have that leading edge. So your system must go high up in frequency to have timing that allows steep transients to go through. So this is the theory. Digital sound recording is based on the so-called Nyquist principle, which says that the sample rate at which you take digital samples of the analog signal, the frequency of that sampling should be more than twice of the highest sound you want to record and reproduce. So for example, in our case, humans, we hear up to 20k kilohertz. That's the theoretical limit for for very young people. That means that the sample rate must be twice 20 kilohertz. That's how we got the 44.1 kilohertz for the Redbook CDs. In practice, though, people, especially at my age, for example, I can only hear up to like 15K. I regularly do a sine sweep and listen to it, and recently I just stopped hearing anything above 15K, which also means that in theory I shouldn't hear the difference between two recordings, one using 30K sample rate, for example. The higher frequency bandwidth would be 15K, and another one that goes much higher up, because my ears are not good enough. But that's the theory, but I don't think it works that way in real life, because I'm pretty sure that I can hear the difference. I could hear the difference, and not in the frequency domain, even though this whole Fourier principle says that frequency can be converted clearly into time and back and forth. But I don't know for what reason, but for example, the hit on the snare drum, which definitely has components over my hearing. If you would just check the transient, the leading edge, you would get and do the Fourier transformation. I'm pretty sure you would get components way over 15K. And still listening to it with my ears that in theory cut off at 15K, I could hear the difference of the snare drum hit transient between two recordings, one with a cutoff frequency of 15K and another one 20K, and the rear gig. At the rear gig, I can easily hear that the snare drum hit is much quicker. So what's the truth? I think we can get closer to the truth when we think that, okay, my ear cuts off everything above 15K. But there's one thing nobody seems to talk about, is there's not only the cutoff frequency that matters, but obviously no low-pass filter has a slope like this. So it goes down gradually. And obviously your ears are the same. They are filters, basically. So if the filter in your DAC has a different characteristic, different slope than your ears, then it just doesn't work. Because you know what I mean. So it can be either that or something else, but I'm pretty sure that even though my ears are not too good any longer in the frequency domain, I can clearly differentiate a quick transient that, according to the Fourier transformation, must have components way above my hearing limit. I still can hear the difference. I can differentiate it when recorded and played back through a system with a limited bandwidth, and when I go to a live gig and listen to the snare drum, especially close, what do you call that? A close field or something like that. And now my experience is in the beginning of the video, I said that I'm going to talk about my experiences and mostly cables and what difference they make. So I used to, if you followed my previous videos, I used to use quite a mixture of cables, but I have some nice cord cables. I had some JPS Aluminata cables, and I like the Aluminata ones. I know it's dividing again because they are quite expensive, and people don't, especially those that don't believe in cables making any difference at all, they can get very pissed off by highly priced cables, and they just find them snake oil. And actually, I'm an engineer. In the very beginning, I had a little doubt, but quickly I started hearing differences, especially after having good quality boxes connected together with cables. It's clear that the speaker cables and interconnects that are in the signal path, they can make a difference, even though we can't really measure or don't know what to measure or don't know what matters. But it's harder to understand why power cables make such huge difference, because they do. So I started with two Aluminata JPS Labs Aluminata power cables on amplifiers, my preamp and my power amp, and wow, it just made the music so pleasant to listen to. It was so foot tapping. It's probably the timing, I don't know. The bass, I got much more bass, much deeper bass. The highs were there, the details were there, it was smooth. So it's a whole different experience. But if I wanted to sum up the difference, I would say the music got so much more enjoyable. It's the foot tapping nature, the prat in the English terminology, pace, rhythm, and timing got super. And harshness was smoothened out somehow, not by rolling off the highs, because the highs were there, and even details were better. I could hear echoes more than before. So slowly but surely I started going full loom Aluminata, and adding the speaker cables. Those made a lot of difference too, again, and a lot more bass, deeper bass, and the whole system started sounding deeper and a little bit like tilted, not tilted up like with some cables, but tilted down is that the word, but not in a bad way. So actually I always liked bass in all my systems compared to live gigs, especially if you're into rock music, and if you go to a live gig, the bass just pounding your chest, and when you turn up your home hi-fi, you don't necessarily get that. But with these Aluminata speaker cables, I started getting the bass was there, and it was pounding and chest pounding, and you could feel the bass, and not only at high volume. So it worked very good, and I just swiped those cables back and forth for other cables, and in the beginning I was wondering, isn't it too much bass? Then I went to a few gigs, live gigs, and I always concluded, no, it's not. It's just like at the live gigs. So I went on I changed my interconnect. That made a similar difference, but very interestingly, probably less than the power cables and the speaker cables. So I bought more power cables, and by now I have 4 Aluminata, and the last 2 I've just added the other day, and I pretty much knew what to expect. My system sounded very good, but I knew what these 2 would do. They would go to the power distributor, between the power distributor and the wall socket, and the preamp, which I know it made a huge difference. But because I'm using the Evo, the Antilleon Evo, it takes 2 power cables, so I had to use identical ones. So I used 2 Aluminatas, so there was no one for my preamp, and I used something else on the preamp, and I knew it could be better because I changed the power cable on my preamp, and they made a lot of difference, but I could never get the sound I wanted. There were always compromises. And I knew the Aluminata would bring the result I want, and it did. It's not only about having more details, but also having more highs. If you followed my previous videos, I compared the Antilleon Evo with the Essence, and I wasn't really sure about which one had the correct tonality, because the Essence sounded a bit brighter in a good way actually, and I found the Evo slightly dark sounding. And with all the Aluminata cables, it's gone. It's no dark siding anymore, it's just right sounding. So these cables really stop putting any limit in the way of the sound. And I'm in no way affiliated with JPS. That's I'm completely, I don't even know them. So I'm just a user, and I'm happy. So the highs are back. An amplifier that sounded dark no matter what I did sounds okay, not okay, brilliant. These cables are super quiet, so there's no noise, so you can hear anything. All the echoes, all the little tiny details in the music, and the decay of instruments is just spot on. You can hear how they just die down, and just the right time. And here they say music is not only the notes. It's not only the notes that matter, but the pause between the notes, the quietness between the notes matters just as much as the notes, and I couldn't agree more. And with these cables, there's quietness between the notes. Just to sum up, these cables bring the most probably, I couldn't say most, I wanted to say the most benefit is in the bass department, because they add a lot of, or emphasize, or just bring out, because they are neutral. I think this is how a system should sound, a huge amount of the bass. Of course, you have to have the right speakers, so don't expect this to happen with small bookshelf speakers. There are some recordings I've never really liked listening to because they didn't have bass. And turns out they had bass, but the bass was deeper than what my cables. Turns out I had the all the boxes and the speakers there that could have handled the deep bass, but the cables were the bottleneck. So now those recordings have the bass back because it just was too deep for normal cables to handle it. Strange, huh? So they bring the most benefit in the bass department, I wanted to say, but that's not true because they add Pratt, they add foot tapping, they bring out a lot of details that the notes start and stop as they should. There's quietness in between the notes, and the highs are back. So everything you get the whole 9 yards with these cables. There's another thing I wanted to mention, and I didn't like. So the system sounded very good. I found the sound, I can't really describe it, but kind of hollow, kind of not having the energy, especially in the bass department. Somehow it was hollow. It didn't punch enough. It was lacking something. And I knew adding these two Aluminatas will just sort it out, and it did. It's super punchy, super energetic now. So I think that cables above used with a system above way above an average level make as much difference as the boxes themselves. And that's the bottom line.